Hi, I'm Marty. Welcome to the event today. I'm your host, and with me I have Mark Burstein, who's an EVP and industry principal for Logility. Today we're going to talk about traceability, what it is, why it's important, and why you should care. But before we get there, we have just a bit of housekeeping. If you have questions today, please enter them into the chat. If you prefer that we not answer those questions in a public forum, if you provide us your contact information, we'd be happy to reach out directly. So Mark, before we start, you know that Logility provides a supply chain platform and the services to allow our customers to deploy best-in-class supply chains. This enables them to make decisions that are the best for their organization, particularly when we're in an area of a disruption. And we know we have been living in a time of disruption. And there's been a lot of stories, but a story that's getting a lot of traction and really rising above the noise is a story about traceability. So will you help us out by starting us off and tell us what exactly is traceability?
Sure, Marty. Hey, it's great to join you today and discuss a topic that I've studied over the past year.
Yeah.
Supply chain traceability, also called transparency, is the ability to track or map the supply chain processes and chain of custody from procurement of raw materials through production of the finished product and ultimately sale to the final consumer.
Okay, so for tracking from the beginning, so why is this such an important thing? Tell us why. Why is it so important?
Well, traceability appeared on my radar early last year. The House of Representatives and the Senate submitted similar bills regarding the Chinese government's repression of the Uyghur people. They're a minority, and they're Muslim minority, and they reside, largely in the Xinjiang province in Western China. Many governments, including the U.S., have denounced the forced labor allegations perpetrated by the Chinese government against the Uyghurs. And the bills proposed in Congress impose various restrictions related to China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. That's located in northwest China, and it prohibits certain imports from that region and imposes sanctions on those responsible for the human rights violations there. Goods harvested or produced in Xinjiang shall not be entitled to entry into the U.S. border unless Customs and Border Protection determines that those goods did not utilize forced labor anywhere in the supply chain. This situation affects many products in multiple industries. For example, almost 600,000 Uyghurs are forced to work on Xinjiang cotton farms. And Xinjiang accounts for 85% of China's cotton supply and 20% of the global cotton trade. Xinjiang also accounts for 70% of China's shipments of tomatoes. And I don't know if you knew this, but China is the world's top exporter of tomato paste, accounting for nearly 40% of the global trade. And also, most people don't realize that Xinjiang is home to 45% of the global polysilicon production. Polysilicon is the primary ingredient in solar panels.
So this is a broad story. It impacts a lot of people and a lot of product. But Mark, sad as it seems, we've heard about worker suppression and stories for a long time. And they don't necessarily get the traction that this story's been getting. So why now? Why are we getting so much traction today?
That's a great question. And I think that a lot of people were caught by surprise. Because even though the Senate bill has not had a formal vote and the president has not signed the bills into law, Customs and Border Protection has the power to enforce Section 307 of the Tariff Act of 1930. This prohibits the importation into the United States of merchandise produced wholly or in part, that's a very important statement, wholly or in part by forced labor. Such merchandise is subject to exclusion or seizure and may lead to criminal investigation of the importer. So this enforcement was initiated on January 13th of this year when CBP issued a withhold release order. That bars all cotton and tomato products with a nexus to Xinjiang from entering U.S. ports. So in layman's terms, if products are detained by CBP, the importer must provide supporting evidence known as proof of admissibility that the products do not have a nexus to Xinjiang. And if the importer cannot verify the origin of their products, they have three options: export them to another country, abandon them, or destroy them. They will not enter the U.S. consumer market.
Oh, those are really wide-ranging consequences. No wonder this is getting so much attention. So I do have a question, and it says, besides Xinjiang, are there other regions and products that are suspected of using forced labor in the harvest or manufacture their products?
Yes, there are. But really, what does this mean for businesses that import goods? The simple answer is that importers must show the chain of custody throughout their supply chain. They must list every supplier, the input and origin of components used to produce the products that they sell, and the verified transactions between the buyer and seller at every level in the supply chain. Importers must demonstrate and present evidence that their supply chain is free of forced labor. And without this verification, it will be extremely difficult to provide the proof of admissibility required by CBP.
When you think about the broad-reaching ramifications of this, it's not just the business; it's the end consumer of their products. So this really has a broad reach, and I can see then why this is getting so much more traction than some of the other stories. Unbelievable. So, another question that's come in is about supply chain traceability. So that we've talked about traceability in the past, but it's becoming a reality today. So besides identifying and eliminating forced labor, what are the other benefits of traceability?
Well, I would say, that's a really great question, and one I'm really excited to answer. Traceability will become the foundation that leads to sustainability and reduce the environmental impact of many industries around the world. Supply chain traceability will also lead to improved ESG scoring by companies that adopt it. But those topics will be discussed in future LinkedIn Live sessions, I'm sure.
Well, it sounds like we might have to have a few more discussions around some of these topics, because these are really deep topics, and they expand, a lot of industries, and they impact a number of businesses. Like you said, about anybody who wants to bring product across the borders have to prove that they're in compliance.
Yeah, and I've heard many organizations and I've heard many individuals state, CBP doesn't have to suspect that your shipment contains forced labor in your products. They actually can randomly pull it aside, and it's up to you to provide that evidence. I've heard this term that you're guilty until proven innocent. And that really becomes an issue, because now you have to prove that there's no forced labor. And without that proof, your goods won't be released.
Wow. Well, and those, like you said, if you can't prove it, you either take it to another country, you abandon it, or you destroy it. Those are a lot. So one more question came in. So how will CBP know if the imported products contain any components or ingredients that originated in Xinjiang?
Yeah, that's it. They don't. They won't know.
They just don't?
They might
They can't
suspect that there are, because, there's a blacklist. They have list of what's called XPCC. That's the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps. That is the paramilitary arm of the Chinese government that runs Xinjiang. And there's a list of companies that are part of XPCC or have a nexus to it. They even suspect there's up to 86,000 affiliates of XPCC. So they're creating a list. And if any of your suppliers are on that list, they're certainly going to stop you. But if they just randomly detain your shipment, again, you're guilty until proven innocent.
It's rough. That is rough. So it sounds like we have some more discussions to have. So where do we go next?
Well, you know what's interesting, though? I'd like to answer one other question because people have, we've been focused on Xinjiang, but there are other regions in the world. I mean, it's been estimated that at least 25 million people globally are victims of forced labor. Like take, for example, palm oil. Palm oil is an ingredient in many foods, beverages, cosmetics, and personal hygiene products.
Mhm.
A recent Associated Press investigation found an abundance of forced labor in Malaysia and Indonesia. And together, those two countries produce 85% of the world's palm oil. So
Wow.
I think this is going to be a much wider spread problem. Right now, the focus is on Xinjiang, but you're going to see this grow, and it's going to become more and more apparent.
I can't imagine if there's already the potential for the Border Patrol to randomly pull, and your list of what you're importing and demand that you can show chain of custody and that you're in compliance, and they're really focused on the Xinjiang area. I just can't imagine what that'll mean if it expands out to products from these other countries.
Well, I'll point something out to you right now. You know that China also produces fabric. So they produce cotton fabric.
Mm-hmm.
This WRO affects cotton products imported from anywhere because China ships their fabric to Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Italy. So virtually any cotton products being imported into the US are subject to this WRO. So right now, I think we're gearing up for something that could become a very big disruptor, not just to the fashion industry, but many industries.
So, Mark, talk about our supply chain customers. How do they get in front of this and make sure that they're in compliance?
Well, one of the topics I'd like to discuss next week, please tune in next week, same day, same time, and we're going to discuss how companies like our customers are currently implementing traceability solutions that verify the chain of custody within their supply chain.
Well, that'll be good. That'll be an interesting conversation to follow up with. So thank you so much. We appreciate all your time. We appreciate all your information and the knowledge that you're sharing with us, because you've spent, like you said, over the past year researching and really being involved with this topic. And, I pulled a list of some of the people that you've spoken to over the last months to bring this topic to order. And here's my list. I had to write it down because there were so many of them. But you've had discussions with people from Sourcing Journal, from the Consumer Goods Technology, from Footwear News, from the Multi-Channel Merchant, Supply and Demand Chain Executive, Textile and Fashion, Forbes, TEC, Chain Store Age, Women's Wear Daily. Who am I leaving off?
Last week, I had an interview with the Wall Street Journal and NBC News. So it is a big topic, and I'm very excited about the activity that's going on, because we need our supply chains to be free of forced labor. So it's really getting the spectrum that it needs.
We do. It's an important topic. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being part of this. We look forward to the discussion next week. I'm going to encourage everybody, if you have more questions or want to know more about our traceability solution, visit our website, Logility.com. We have a section specifically on traceability, and please reach out with any of your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye.